As global competition for biotech dominance intensifies, nations are racing to secure strategic resources and innovation capabilities. At the heart of the U.S. response, IQT is pioneering efforts to advance America's biotech edge. In alignment with the 2020 Bioeconomy Executive Order, IQT continues to harness the power of synthetic biology, AI, engineering biology, and biomanufacturing, monitoring and investing in breakthroughs that address complex national security challenges. After all, today's innovations can help safeguard the bioeconomy of the future and reduce reliance on foreign biotech supply chains, fortifying the nation's resilience in health, energy, and security amid shifting geopolitical tides. Welcome to IQT Explains, a series on the IQT podcast where we explore global technology trends and their impact on national security to provide you, our listeners, insights and unique perspectives. I'm today's host, Farid Nemri, and today we're continuing our three-part podcast series covering IQT's investment and activity in the bio domain. In last week's episode, we covered IQT's origins with the biodomain, and in today's episode, we'll cover IQT's more recent activity within this ever-evolving tech area. To get things started, I'll introduce today's guests, Eugene Chiu and Dr. Michelle Rozo. Eugene is a senior partner on the investment team at IQT and co-lead of IQT's BNext practice, focused on the intersection of national security and the biorevolution. Eugene has led IQT investments across engineering biology and engineering healthcare in areas such as synthetic biology, genomic technologies, next-generation vaccines and therapeutics, diagnostics, and digital health. Eugene, thank you so much for joining us virtually today.
Thank you, Farid. Excited to be here.
Awesome. And Michelle is a Vice President of Technical Capabilities at IQT. She was previously Director of Technology and National Security at the U.S. National Security Council, where she advised the President and National Security Advisor on biotechnology and national security policy, and the Principal Director for Biotech within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering at the Department of Defense. Michelle, thank you for joining me here at the studio today.
Thanks, Farid.
Awesome. So colleagues on the BNext practice joined me last time, specifically Megan Anderson and Kevin O'Connell, and we explored IQT's early efforts in the biodomain. So we covered the period estimately between post 9/11 up until the pandemic, and all the tech areas and investments we've had as InQtel during that time. And of course, since then, the priorities have shifted. And in today's episode with you, I want us to focus on the past 4 years. So 2020, onset of the pandemic, into 2024, here we're almost done with the year, and how the landscape has changed. So Eugene, I can start with you. In my conversation with Megan and Kevin last time, they highlighted specific key tech areas that were relevant in the past 2 decades, leading up to the pandemic. And that includes, of course, field portable tech, synthetic biology, pandemic preparedness, of course. But when we look at the past 4 years specifically, how have things changed? What were the major shifts? And how have we adopted as IQT in our investment activities and priorities?
Thanks, Farid. A lot has actually changed in the last 4 years. If you look at beginning in 2020, we were really in the middle of the pandemic at that time. And, one of the big achievements really in the history of biotechnology and certainly in the context of the pandemic was the introduction and the launch of the COVID mRNA vaccines, which, of course, had a major impact in terms of the pandemic response. That's really the first time, if you will, that we had this type of very rapid vaccine development and then launch. And it's really the mRNA technologies and the launch of mRNA technologies in that context from in a real commercial setting that has been a major factor over the last 4 years in terms of continuing interest in that particular area. In addition to that, we've also seen a number of advances in other areas. For example, in the area of gene editing and CRISPR medicines, Last year, we saw the launch of the approval for Cascavy, essentially the first CRISPR medicines to be FDA approved. In the area of AI and biotechnology, we've saw over the last 4 years also the big achievement that AlphaFold made in terms of being able to understand protein structures, and then the subsequent advances in that technology area as it relates to protein engineering, design, etc. We've seen continued advancements in terms of the engineering of biology as we see the advances in AI and the advances in technology and computing integrated with advances in understanding biology and the ability to manipulate biology to drive really significant efforts in how we can design and build and manufacture medicines, as well as industrial applications of biotechnologies, everything from plants to other types of technologies.
Excellent. So, Michelle, these are incredibly exciting areas of developments here and technologies that Eugene just covered. When we're thinking about the challenges or barriers to what could get in the way of us fully leveraging those capabilities, or when we're thinking about overall capacity for innovation, so whether it's domestic production or onshoring of certain capabilities, what are some of the most major bottlenecks or challenges you think of in those tech areas? And feel free to dig deeper into one or other specific technology area.
Okay. Thanks, Fareed, and thanks, Eugene. So 2 of the areas that Eugene covered, I will expand on a little bit more into why they are bottlenecks for the field and sort of how In-Q-Tel is thinking about investing in them, especially in the technologies to try to move those forward. So one is the intersection of AI and bio, and the other is biomanufacturing. Eugene covered some of the advances that have happened recently as these technologies are converging. Let me just step back a moment to give a bit of an explainer for our non-bio audiences of what this really means. So
that's always great. Thank you.
So just like ChatGPT was trained on the corpus of human language, we can now train bio large language models on biological information. So think DNA and protein sequences. And just like we can ask ChatGPT a question, so Thanksgiving's coming up, we might want to say, what is the best stuffing recipe? Look through and find the ones that are the best rated and give me a recipe so that I can, and a shopping list so I can go to the grocery store. We can now do the same thing with a bio large language model. We can say, I want to find an enzyme that has this function, right? That is going to potentially capture carbon from the air. Let's say that. Go through and identify enzymes that can do this and give me the sequence. And so in that way, you're able to pulse the corpus of biological information, iterate on design, and get an output of a sequence or a design that's going to perform that function. This is really the first step of being able to leverage artificial intelligence on biological information. But we envision a world where biologists will be able to design in completely new proteins, new biology that has functions that we haven't seen of or heard of before, which would really explode the applications for biology. But today there is a bottleneck, which is data. And so for going back to the ChatGPT example, this was trained on 570 billion tokens. The scale of information in biology is just much less. We just don't have that much information. And it's not as information rich. So if you think about the human genome, 99.9% is identical. So when you're looking for differences, you're really looking in this case for a needle in the haystack. This is where more biological data is going to help performance of these models, more well-annotated, well-curated data sets. This is a big challenge right now and is something that we are looking at for companies that are exploring novel ways to go out and find new information to add to that corpus of biological data. For example, some companies are going out and doing what's called expeditionary sequencing. They're going across the world and analyzing and finding information about biology that lives in the Antarctic, in the desert. And in doing so, they can search for functionality of proteins, of molecules that have survived to live in those crazy climates. And so hopefully we as scientists can begin to leverage that in our designs moving forward. So that's one area. The second that I'll highlight is biomanufacturing. This is sort of another big bottleneck that we're investing in here at InQtel. Biomanufacturing's been around for a long time. We throw this term around a lot, but really we're familiar with this in our day-to-day lives. You can think of just brewing beer. This is a very primitive version of biomanufacturing, where yeast converts sugar into alcohol. Now with engineering biology and some of the advances that Eugene talked about in the ability to engineer organisms, we can now engineer that yeast strain and other strains so that their metabolic pathway converts carbon and sugars into other products that are useful for the world. And so that can be chemicals, fuels, lubricants, materials. And we're increasingly reaching a place where we can make organisms, design and build almost anything we want in the lab. DARPA actually had a really exciting program about this called the 1,000 Molecules Program, where they showed they performed this in spades. They were able to say over 1,000 molecules that were relevant for the Department of Defense and the national security community, they could make trace amounts in the lab. But it's really challenging to get more than just that trace amount, to get that to scale and really make these products available for the market. And there's technological reasons why biomanufacturing is a bottleneck, manufacturing capacity, regulation, financing. But at a technology issue and some of the things that we're trying to address here at InQtel is researchers have focused a lot of time on these sort of traditional organisms, what we call chassis. They're sort of the backbone of the engineering biology ecosystem. And they like to produce some products. They don't like to produce other products. And sometimes the products that we want them to make are toxic in large amounts. And so as the organism makes more and more of it, and we try to get, think of those, again, big brewery full vats, that can become toxic back to the cell and the cell dies. And so you don't get the product out at the end that you really need. So companies are trying to figure out how to innovate around this. We're invested in a company, for example, called Tierra Biosciences that's trying to do something called cell-free biomanufacturing, so remove the cell entirely to help prevent some of that toxicity. We're also we're invested in a company called Antheia that's using biomanufacturing to make active pharmaceutical ingredients and have really highly engineered that organism to be very efficient at using its metabolic pathway in this means of production. So just a couple areas of our investment and sort of how we are using the tools that are available to us to address some of the bottlenecks that exist with innovation today.
Absolutely. And you and I worked briefly on the biomanufacturing piece, and I know as a non-expert myself, it took me some time to really wrap my head around what are we referring to when we refer to biomanufacturing. And I appreciate you breaking that concept down to our listeners. And one of the things we also looked into is there's the backdrop of great power competition.
That's right.
So as we are investing in these technologies and as those are evolving, the world goes on and there's competition, there are tensions geopolitically, and it's important for us to, as InQtel, support our government partners as that's unfolding. So let me build on that, those bottlenecks, those challenges that Michelle mentioned, Eugene, and go to you and say, with the backdrop of great power competition, certain geopolitical tensions that may affect, supply chains and how these companies are functioning and operating and growing, how do we as InQtel continue to serve as a thought leader for other investors in those early stage or, promising in the long-term sort of technologies and companies?
So in addition to the investing that we have done historically to bring capability to our government partners, we are now beginning to invest in strategic technology areas, and in particular engineering biology, to highlight the importance of those technologies to policymakers, to our government partners, and to other private investors. In order to advance U.S. leadership in those areas, and in particular within the area of engineering biology, to the points that Michelle made, we have taken an architectural approach to that investing activity, and are highlighting and really focusing on the biomanufacturing elements, these sort of fundamental and breakthrough platform technologies that could be game changers in biomanufacturing, as well as in the areas of data and AI-enabled design. So, for example, in the biomanufacturing area, in addition to the companies that Michelle mentioned, we are investors in a company called Prolific Machines, which is taking a very novel approach to using light as a mechanism to, or as a modality to uh, enhance and accelerate growth of mammalian cells in ways that are much more cost effective and efficient without the use of costly growth factors in the media. And that's particularly important in areas such as, for example, in therapeutics and medicines, where uh, proteins can be very difficult to express or produce at scale. Technologies like Prolific Machines optogenetics platform could fundamentally transform that and provide a US-based source for, or site and source for important medicines. In the design areas, AI-enabled design areas, we are investors in companies in the area of AI-enabled protein design, and that's very important as we think about the ability to come up with new proteins and new enzymes that are very powerful in terms of their applications in industrial biotechnologies, but also as well in a number of different therapeutic applications. And then finally, we are continuing to also look at exemplar application areas which are transformative to this area of engineering biology, to show the world that engineering biology is a capability that's as transformative as AI, in fact, and information technologies, and can be the solution or part of the solution in many ways for many of the challenges facing us from a global perspective. And those include areas such as environmental remediation, to areas such as important supply chain minerals and source materials, all the way to areas such as agricultural technologies and plants, etc. And we're very excited about our investments in engineering biology writ large, including companies like Colossal Biosciences.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just want to build on where Eugene ended and emphasize his great points, because I think it's also for non-biological listeners, I think the first thing that people think about when they think about bio is they think about medicine, right? And they think about the health applications that biology can provide. And of course, the vaccines, where we started this conversation, right? This amazing technology that was able to help us out of the COVID-19 pandemic. But those other applications that Eugene just ended with, things like environmental remediation and supply chain resiliency and the ability to create a more secure and sustainable food supply and lead to food security with agricultural innovations. All of these reasons are why U.S. leadership is so critical in engineering biology, and why this technology area that is up for grabs, that's a contested area. We're not yet at that inflection point for this technology yet, will have enormous implications for economic and national security, way beyond health, of course, to include health, but way beyond that as well. And this is something, I think we still do not fully grasp yet all of the ways in which biology is going to impact our lives moving forward, just how much of a potential impact it could have to our economy, to our national security. And so this is really the emphasis behind this investing, as Eugene mentioned, is to bring into attention just how important all of these areas are, to really jumpstart the mind of what biology can do, and show that some of these areas are underinvested in the national interest, either underinvested in by the private sector or by the public sector. And there are certain areas where additional public support across engineering biology applications could help jumpstart that forward. One example that comes to mind is, Eugene mentioned a couple biomanufacturing areas. We've talked about Prolific Machines and their applications, for therapeutics. I mentioned Anthea, which is doing biomanufacturing for active pharmaceutical ingredients, but using more of an industrial means. what we still need more of is just a sensor in this manufacturing platform, in biomanufacturing platforms, that can sense biology and be able to be responsive. And so this type of sensor is a really good government, endeavor, right? A potential value add for a government program on just building better sensors to sense biology and have that feedback loop for biomanufacturing. But right now, there's not that great cross-disciplinary focus from federal funders. And so that's, again, an area where IQT investment across all of these different areas can help to highlight where there are gaps in public and private capital and serve as that beacon, if you will, for where additional support may help in continuing to lead forward a U.S. vision for engineering biology.
Absolutely. And what a great way for us to kind of conclude this conversation, focusing on the present, because there's a lot of promise, there's a lot of opportunity. But as we consider those, in the long term, there may be a lot of threats too. So in our next episode with your colleagues from the BNext practice, I'll hopefully be able to cover their input and their insights on, in the long term, what are those opportunities? How can we continue to pursue them and leverage the capabilities we have access to? But also, how can we prevent or mitigate risk and threats of such an impactful, area of technology? As you said, it goes from health and medicine to sustainability, and we'll touch on a lot of bigger topics just thinking ahead. Thank you both for such a wonderful and insightful conversation. There's a lot for all of us to think about and a lot for me to go back and Google on, just do some more research on what these technology areas entail. Appreciate your time and looking forward to continuing our series next time around. Our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in into today's episode of IQT Explains on the IQT podcast. Tune in next time around to catch the third part of this series, where we will explore more and more in the bio domain. And to ensure that you don't miss any of the good episodes, please make sure to subscribe to the IQT podcast and leave us a review or comment. I'm always failing to ask a question, I'm sure, so maybe put that in the comment and we'll address it next time around. I also encourage you to check out IQT's website, www.iqt.org, to explore more content and learn about IQT's global investment platform that helps accelerate the introduction of groundbreaking technologies to enhance the national security and prosperity of America and its allies. Thank you.